Have you ever tried walking faster because you believed it would melt away more belly fat? Maybe you've pushed yourself to power walk until you're breathing heavily, your legs are burning, and sweat is dripping down your face. It certainly feels like you're doing more work, so it must be burning more visceral fat, right? Surprisingly, that's not always how your body works. Millions of people make the same assumption every day. They believe that if a slow walk burns some fat, then a faster walk must burn even more. As a result, they increase their speed week after week, hoping to shrink the stubborn fat surrounding their organs. But despite working harder, many are disappointed when their waistline barely changes. Some become exhausted after only 10 or 15 minutes. Others develop sore joints or simply lose motivation because every walk feels like another difficult workout. Eventually, they begin wondering whether walking is even effective for losing belly fat at all. The truth is much more fascinating than most people realize. Your body does not decide which fuel to burn based only on how hard you are working. Instead, it constantly analyzes oxygen availability, hormone levels, muscle demand, blood sugar, insulin, mitochondrial capacity, and how sustainable your pace is. Walking too slowly may not create enough energy demand to significantly challenge your metabolism. But walking too fast can push your body toward relying more heavily on glucose instead of stored fat. Hidden between these two extremes is a metabolic sweet spot that many people accidentally skip. In today's video, we're going to uncover the science behind walking speed and visceral fat. You'll learn why the fastest walk isn't always the best fat-burning walk, what happens inside your muscles and organs as your pace changes, how your body chooses between glucose and fat, and how to discover the walking speed that works best for your own metabolism. Once you understand this hidden biology, you'll never judge a walk by speed alone again. One of the biggest myths about walking is that the faster you walk, the more visceral fat you burn. On the surface, this idea makes perfect sense. A fast walk feels harder than a slow walk. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing becomes heavier. Your body temperature rises. You may sweat more, feel your legs working harder, and see a higher calorie number on your fitness tracker. So naturally, most people assume that a harder walk must automatically mean more belly fat is being burned. But the body does not work that simply. Burning more calories per minute is not the same thing as burning the highest amount of visceral fat efficiently. Calories are just a measurement of energy. That energy can come from different sources: glucose in the bloodstream, glycogen stored in the muscles and liver, fatty acids released from fat tissue, or a mixture of all three. The question is not only how much energy you burn, but where that energy is coming from. When you walk at a lower or moderate intensity, your body has enough oxygen to use fat more efficiently. Fat is a powerful fuel, but it is slow. It requires oxygen, mitochondrial activity, and the right hormonal environment. Think of fat like slow-burning firewood. It can produce steady energy for a long time, but it takes more time and oxygen to use properly. Glucose, on the other hand, is like quick-burning paper. It lights fast, burns fast, and can provide energy quickly when the body needs immediate power. This is why very fast walking is not always the best speed for visceral fat. When your pace becomes too intense, your muscles demand ATP quickly. The body responds by increasing its use of glucose and glycogen, because these fuels can produce energy faster than fat. Fat burning may still happen, but the percentage of energy coming from fat can decrease as intensity rises too high. Visceral fat also has its own rules. It is metabolically active, but it does not simply melt because you are sweating. To release fatty acids from visceral fat, your body needs lower insulin, steady oxygen supply, repeated energy demand, and enough time for hormones such as adrenaline and glucagon to support fat mobilization. If insulin remains high because of frequent snacking, poor sleep, chronic stress, or large sugary meals, your fat cells may stay relatively locked even if you walk aggressively. This is why the best walking speed for visceral fat is not the fastest speed possible. It is the fastest pace you can sustain while staying mostly aerobic. In other words, the ideal pace is challenging enough to raise your heart rate and activate your muscles, but not so intense that your body has to depend mostly on quick glucose fuel. So instead of asking, "How fast can I walk?" the better question is, What pace lets my body burn fat efficiently for long enough to create real metabolic change? To understand why walking speed matters so much, we need to look inside the body and watch how your metabolism responds as your pace changes. Every step you take sends signals throughout your entire body. Your muscles begin contracting, your heart pumps faster, your lungs deliver more oxygen, hormones start shifting, and your cells continuously decide which fuel source should power the next movement. The fascinating part is that this decision changes depending on how fast you walk. Let's begin with a very slow walking pace. Imagine strolling through a park while enjoying the scenery. Your breathing remains almost the same as when you're standing still. You could easily hold a conversation without taking a deeper breath. Your heart rate rises only slightly above resting levels, and your muscles require relatively little energy. Because the demand is low, your body has plenty of oxygen available. In this situation, fat can provide a relatively high percentage of the energy being used. However, there is an important catch. The total amount of energy your body needs is also quite small. Imagine a tiny fireplace burning only one small piece of wood every hour. Even if that fireplace burns only wood, it is still consuming very little fuel overall. Likewise, a very slow walk may use a respectable proportion of fat. But because total calorie expenditure is low, the overall amount of visceral fat being used remains limited unless you continue walking for a long period. This type of walking is still extremely valuable. It improves circulation, reduces stress, supports recovery, and encourages people who are older, sedentary, or recovering from illness to stay active. But if the goal is maximizing visceral fat reduction, simply walking very slowly for a short period may not provide enough metabolic stimulus. Now increase your pace to a comfortable but purposeful walk. Your arms swing naturally. Your stride becomes slightly longer. Your breathing becomes deeper, but you are still comfortable. You can carry on a conversation, although your sentences become shorter. This is where something remarkable begins to happen. Your heart pumps more blood with each beat, delivering additional oxygen to working muscles. Blood vessels widen, allowing better circulation throughout the legs. Muscle temperature rises, making contractions more efficient. Most importantly, your mitochondria begin operating in their ideal environment. These tiny structures require oxygen to convert fatty acids into ATP. At a moderate pace, oxygen delivery is high enough to support efficient fat oxidation, while energy demand is also meaningful enough to require a steady supply of fuel. Your muscles now begin using both glucose and fatty acids together. Instead of relying almost entirely on carbohydrates, they gradually increase the amount of energy coming from stored fat. Muscle contractions also stimulate GLUT4 transporters to move toward the cell surface. These transporters act like tiny doors that allow glucose to enter muscle cells without requiring as much insulin. As a result, blood sugar begins falling naturally, insulin demand decreases, and your body gradually creates an environment that favors continued fat mobilization. This combination of moderate energy demand, excellent oxygen delivery, improving insulin sensitivity, and efficient mitochondrial activity is why many exercise scientists describe this intensity as the metabolic sweet spot. It is not because the body burns only fat. Rather, it burns enough fat while maintaining a workload that can be sustained for a long time. Duration and consistency amplify these effects, making moderate walking one of the most effective long-term strategies for reducing visceral fat. Now imagine increasing your pace even further until you are power walking. Your breathing becomes noticeably heavier, speaking in full sentences becomes difficult. Your arms pump aggressively, and your legs begin working much harder. Your heart rate climbs rapidly as your muscles demand more and more ATP. At this point, your body faces a different challenge. Although oxygen delivery has increased, your muscles are asking for energy faster than fat alone can provide it. To keep up with this demand, the body begins shifting toward greater use of glucose and glycogen, because these fuels can generate ATP much more quickly. The liver releases additional glucose into the bloodstream, while muscle glycogen becomes an increasingly important energy source. This does not mean fat burning completely stops. Fat continues contributing to energy production, but its percentage often becomes smaller as exercise intensity rises. If the pace becomes too difficult to maintain, another problem appears. Many people simply cannot continue for very long. They become fatigued after 10 or 15 minutes. Their breathing becomes uncomfortable, and they stop walking altogether. Ironically, they may have burned more calories per minute than someone walking at a moderate pace, but because their session ended much sooner, their total opportunity for sustained fat oxidation may actually be reduced. A person who comfortably walks for 35 or 40 minutes at a moderate pace often creates a much larger cumulative metabolic effect than someone who power walks for only 12 minutes before giving up. This is why the so-called fat-burning zone is frequently misunderstood. It does not mean that the lowest intensity is automatically best, nor does it mean the highest intensity is always superior. Instead, it describes the range where fat oxidation is high enough, oxygen delivery is sufficient, and total energy demand is meaningful enough to produce lasting metabolic adaptations. So how can you tell if you're walking in that range without expensive laboratory equipment? One of the simplest tools is something called the talk test. If you can comfortably speak in short sentences but would struggle to sing an entire song, you're probably very close to your ideal aerobic pace. Your breathing should be deeper than normal, but not desperate. You should feel warm, energized, and capable of continuing for another 20 or 30 minutes if necessary. For many healthy adults, this corresponds to roughly 60 to 70% of their maximum heart rate. However, age, medications, fitness level, body weight, terrain, and underlying medical conditions all influence this number. That is why listening to your breathing and overall comfort often provides more useful guidance than obsessing over an exact heart rate. Moderate walking also produces another powerful benefit that has little to do with calories. When you walk at this sustainable pace, your muscles continue absorbing glucose efficiently for an extended period. Blood sugar spikes after meals become smaller, insulin gradually decreases, and repeated sessions train your mitochondria to become larger, stronger, and more efficient at burning fat. In other words, you're not just burning energy today, you are teaching your body to become better at burning fat tomorrow. Understanding these biological differences helps explain why walking speed matters so much. But to truly see how these processes unfold, let's compare what happens minute by minute at slow, moderate, and fast walking speeds throughout an entire walking session. Now that you understand how your body selects fuel at different intensities, let's watch the entire process unfold over time. Imagine 3 people starting a walk at exactly the same moment. The first person chooses a very slow, relaxed pace. The second walks at a steady, purposeful pace that feels comfortable but challenging. The third immediately begins power walking as fast as possible. Although they all started together, their bodies begin taking very different metabolic paths. During the first 5 minutes, all 3 walkers experience similar changes. Their muscles begin contracting repeatedly, their brains coordinate movement, and their hearts respond by increasing blood flow. But the intensity of these changes is very different. The slow walker remains almost completely comfortable. Heart rate rises only slightly, breathing changes very little, and energy demand stays low. Because oxygen is abundant compared to the muscle's needs, fat contributes a relatively good percentage of the fuel being used. However, since the total workload is small, the overall amount of energy being burned is also limited. The moderate walker experiences a more noticeable response. Heart rate climbs into a healthy aerobic range, breathing becomes deeper, muscles begin requiring more fuel, and blood circulation improves significantly. Muscle fibers start consuming glucose while gradually preparing to increase fat oxidation as oxygen delivery continues improving. Meanwhile, the fast walker immediately demands much more energy. Heart rate rises rapidly, breathing becomes heavier, and muscles begin consuming glucose and glycogen at a much faster rate. The body prioritizes quick fuel because immediate ATP production becomes the highest priority. Even though fat is still contributing, carbohydrates dominate the early stages of this faster effort. Between 5 and 10 minutes, the differences become even more obvious. The slow walker settles into an easy rhythm. Blood vessels remain relaxed, circulation improves, and stress levels often decrease. This pace is excellent for recovery, reducing mental fatigue, and encouraging daily movement. However, because the metabolic challenge remains relatively small, Significant visceral fat reduction generally requires longer walking sessions, performed consistently over many weeks. The moderate walker now enters an ideal phase. Oxygen delivery catches up with muscular demand, allowing mitochondria to operate efficiently. More fatty acids begin reaching muscle cells, where they can be converted into ATP. Muscle contractions continue stimulating GLUT4 transporters, allowing glucose to leave the bloodstream and enter muscles efficiently without requiring large amounts of insulin. Blood sugar begins stabilizing. Insulin gradually falls, and the internal conditions become increasingly favorable for fat mobilization. The fast walker, however, experiences another shift. As energy demand continues rising, muscle glycogen becomes an increasingly important fuel source. Stress hormones, such as adrenaline, increase further to support rapid energy production. This is useful for improving cardiovascular fitness and athletic performance. But it also means the body depends more heavily on rapidly available carbohydrates to sustain the higher intensity. Now we reach the 10 to 20 minute period, where the long-term effects of walking speed become especially important. The slow walker continues moving comfortably with little fatigue. This pace remains excellent for beginners, older adults, people recovering from illness, or anyone trying to reduce stress. If maintained for 45 minutes or an hour, even this gentle pace can contribute meaningfully to total fat utilization simply because of the extended duration. The moderate walker, however, reaches what many researchers consider the most efficient balance between energy demand and fat oxidation. Heart rate has stabilized, breathing remains controlled, and oxygen delivery fully supports aerobic metabolism. Fatty acids released from adipose tissue now contribute a larger share of total energy production. Visceral fat surrounding the liver, intestines, and other abdominal organs gradually becomes a more accessible fuel source as insulin remains relatively low and muscles continue demanding energy. This is the stage many people unknowingly miss when they stop their walk too early. The fast walker faces a different challenge. While fitness adaptations certainly continue, fatigue begins accumulating more quickly. Some people naturally slow down because maintaining such intensity becomes uncomfortable. Others continue pushing themselves, but their reliance on glycogen remains relatively high. If the pace exceeds what their aerobic system can comfortably support, they may find themselves needing frequent breaks, reducing the total duration of their walk. As the session extends into 20 to 40 minutes, the contrast becomes even clearer. The slow walker continues benefiting from movement, improved circulation, and stress reduction. For individuals with limited mobility or chronic health conditions, this may still be an excellent choice because consistency matters more than perfection. Given enough time, even slow walking contributes to meaningful calorie expenditure and gradual improvements in metabolic health. The moderate walker reaches the greatest balance between sustainability and fat utilization. Walking now feels smooth and natural. Heart rate remains elevated but comfortable. Muscles efficiently alternate between glucose and fatty acids, while mitochondria continue producing ATP at a steady rate. Blood sugar remains stable, insulin sensitivity improves, and the body spends an extended period operating in an environment that encourages visceral fat reduction. Because the pace feels manageable, most people can continue for 30, 40, or even 60 minutes without excessive fatigue. The fast walker may still be exercising effectively, but maintaining this intensity becomes increasingly difficult for many individuals. Legs become tired, breathing grows heavier, and motivation often declines. In some cases, the high intensity also stimulates a stronger appetite afterward, leading people to consume more calories than they intended. While this does not happen to everyone, it is another reason why simply walking faster does not automatically translate into greater visceral fat loss. Now imagine repeating these 3 styles of walking 5 days every week for several months. The slow walker experiences gradual improvements in mobility, circulation, and general health. The fast walker develops stronger cardiovascular fitness and may improve athletic performance if recovery is adequate. But the moderate walker often experiences the most balanced combination of benefits. Mitochondria become more numerous through mitochondrial biogenesis. Muscles grow increasingly efficient at using fat as fuel. Insulin sensitivity continues improving. Waist circumference slowly decreases. Resting heart rate drops as the heart becomes stronger. Blood sugar becomes more stable throughout the day, and excess liver fat may gradually decline. These changes are not the result of one perfect workout. They are the product of hundreds of repeated sessions that gently teach the body to become more metabolically flexible. The body learns to switch between glucose and fat more efficiently, making visceral fat easier to access over time. But none of these improvements happen because of muscles alone. Every major organ is adapting behind the scenes, each playing a unique role in determining how effectively your chosen walking speed transforms your health. Although your legs are doing the visible work during a walk, they are only one part of a much larger biological team. Every major organ responds differently, depending on how fast you walk, and together, they determine whether your body becomes better at burning visceral fat over time. This is why walking is much more than simply moving from one place to another. It is a full-body conversation between your brain, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, muscles, blood vessels, fat tissue, and even the microscopic mitochondria inside your cells. Let's begin with the brain. Every step starts here. Before your feet touch the ground, your brain sends electrical signals through your nervous system to coordinate posture, balance, vision, and muscle movement. At a moderate walking pace, blood flow to the brain increases without placing excessive stress on the nervous system. More oxygen reaches brain tissue, helping neurons function efficiently while encouraging the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. This protein supports learning, memory, and the formation of new neural connections. Many people notice that after 20 or 30 minutes of comfortable walking, their thoughts become clearer, their mood improves, and stress feels easier to manage. If the pace becomes excessively intense for someone's fitness level, however, the experience may become mentally uncomfortable rather than enjoyable, making it less likely that they will repeat the habit consistently. The heart also behaves differently depending on your walking speed. During a moderate walk, the heart gradually increases both its rate and its stroke volume, meaning it pumps more blood with each beat. This allows oxygen-rich blood to reach muscles efficiently without placing unnecessary strain on the cardiovascular system. Over weeks and months, the heart muscle becomes stronger, resting heart rate often decreases, and overall aerobic capacity improves. Walking much faster certainly challenges the heart more, but for many beginners or older adults, sustaining that effort every day may be unrealistic. Moderate intensity often provides the ideal balance between improvement and recovery. Your blood vessels quietly contribute to this process as well. The inner lining of healthy arteries produces nitric oxide, a signaling molecule that tells blood vessels to relax and widen. As you continue walking at a steady aerobic pace, increased blood flow stimulates greater nitric oxide production. Wider blood vessels improve circulation throughout the body, allowing oxygen and nutrients to reach working muscles more efficiently, while helping remove carbon dioxide and other metabolic waste products. Better endothelial function also supports healthier blood pressure and reduces stress on the cardiovascular system over time. These improvements may seem invisible, but they create the foundation for better long-term metabolic health. Now consider your skeletal muscles, the largest consumers of energy during walking. Every contraction requires ATP, and every step creates an opportunity for muscles to remove glucose from the bloodstream. One of the remarkable features of moderate walking is that muscle contractions activate GLUT4 transporters, allowing glucose to enter muscle cells with much less dependence on insulin. This means your muscles become powerful glucose sinks, helping stabilize blood sugar naturally. At the same time, mitochondria inside these muscle cells receive a steady supply of oxygen, allowing them to burn both glucose and fatty acids efficiently. Because the pace remains sustainable, muscles continue working for a longer period, maximizing the cumulative metabolic effect. The mitochondria deserve special attention because they are ultimately responsible for converting fuel into usable energy. These tiny organelles function like highly efficient power plants. Fat cannot simply disappear on its own. Before stored fat can become movement, it must first be released from fat cells, transported through the bloodstream, carried into muscle cells, and finally burned inside mitochondria through aerobic metabolism. Moderate walking provides nearly ideal conditions for this process. because oxygen delivery remains strong, while energy demand stays high enough to keep mitochondria active without overwhelming them. Repeating this type of walking several times each week stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning your body literally builds more mitochondria and improves the efficiency of the ones you already have. Over time, this increases your natural ability to burn fat during both exercise and daily activities. Your liver also benefits tremendously from the right walking speed. After meals, the liver helps regulate blood glucose by storing excess sugar as glycogen. During walking, muscles begin consuming glucose, and the liver carefully releases stored glycogen when necessary to maintain stable blood sugar levels. As moderate walking improves insulin sensitivity over time, the liver becomes better at balancing glucose production and storage. Research has shown that consistent aerobic exercise can also reduce excess fat accumulation inside the liver, improving overall metabolic health and lowering the risk of metabolic dysfunction associated with fatty liver disease. The pancreas responds in a similarly beneficial way. Because walking muscles absorb glucose more efficiently, the pancreas does not need to release as much insulin to keep blood sugar under control. Lower insulin demand reduces stress on the insulin-producing beta cells and gradually improves insulin sensitivity throughout the body. Since high insulin levels tend to suppress fat release from adipose tissue, repeatedly lowering insulin through regular moderate walking creates an environment where stored visceral fat becomes increasingly available as an energy source. Fat tissue itself is far more active than many people realize. Visceral fat is not simply sitting inside the abdomen waiting to disappear. It constantly communicates with the rest of the body by releasing hormones and inflammatory signaling molecules. During a moderate walk, declining insulin and increasing catecholamines such as adrenaline encourage hormone-sensitive lipase to break stored triglycerides into free fatty acids. These fatty acids then travel through the bloodstream toward working muscles. Because the walking pace is sustainable, muscles continue requiring fuel for an extended period, allowing more of these released fatty acids to be oxidized instead of simply returning to storage later. There is another system that often receives very little attention: the body's stress response. Walking should challenge the body, but it should not constantly overwhelm it. If every walk feels exhausting, painful, or impossible to sustain, your brain may begin associating exercise with discomfort rather than enjoyment. This makes consistency much more difficult. Moderate walking, on the other hand, often lowers psychological stress while still providing enough physical challenge to stimulate metabolic adaptation. People are far more likely to repeat an activity that leaves them feeling energized instead of defeated. When all of these organs work together, a clear pattern begins to emerge. The most effective walking speed is not determined by pride, competition, or how much you sweat. It is determined by how well your organs cooperate over time. The ideal pace allows your brain to stay focused, your heart to pump efficiently, your blood vessels to circulate freely, your muscles to absorb glucose, your mitochondria to burn fat, your liver to stabilize blood sugar, your pancreas to reduce insulin demand, and your visceral fat to gradually release stored energy. These invisible adaptations eventually become visible in everyday life. They appear as a smaller waistline, steadier blood sugar, greater endurance, improved energy, and a healthier metabolism. Those are the real-life changes we'll explore next. One of the most encouraging things about choosing the right walking speed is that the benefits extend far beyond burning calories. In fact, many of the biggest improvements happen long before you notice a dramatic change in your appearance. Your metabolism begins adapting quietly behind the scenes, and those small biological improvements eventually translate into meaningful changes in everyday life. After several weeks of walking at a steady, sustainable pace, many people notice that they wake up with more energy instead of feeling sluggish every morning. Their afternoon crashes become less frequent because blood sugar remains more stable throughout the day. They no longer feel the overwhelming urge to reach for sugary snacks between meals, and they often discover that their appetite becomes easier to control naturally. These changes are not caused by willpower alone. They reflect better insulin sensitivity, healthier hormone regulation, and muscles that have become much more efficient at using both glucose and fat for energy. As the months go by, additional improvements often appear. Waist circumference gradually becomes smaller as visceral fat slowly decreases. Walking uphill or climbing stairs no longer feels exhausting. Resting heart rate begins to decline because the heart has become stronger and more efficient. Many people sleep more deeply, recover faster from daily stress, and feel mentally sharper throughout the day. Blood pressure may improve, fasting glucose often becomes more stable, and overall endurance continues increasing. These are the kinds of long-term changes that support healthier aging and reduce the risk of chronic metabolic disease. Unfortunately, many people prevent themselves from reaching these benefits by making a few common mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes is walking too slowly for only 10 or 15 minutes and expecting dramatic fat loss. While gentle walking is certainly beneficial, a very short and extremely easy walk may not create enough metabolic demand to significantly influence visceral fat over time. The opposite mistake is just as common. Some people walk so fast that they become exhausted after only 8 or 10 minutes. They assume that more intensity automatically means more fat burning, even though their bodies are relying increasingly on glucose, and they cannot sustain the activity long enough to maximize its long-term metabolic effects. Another misunderstanding is believing that sweat is a direct sign of fat loss. Sweating simply helps regulate body temperature. You can sweat heavily on a hot day without burning much additional fat, or you can burn a significant amount of fat during a comfortable walk with relatively little sweat. Confusing the two often leads people to chase discomfort instead of consistency. Other common mistakes include staring at a phone while barely increasing walking intensity, eating back every calorie immediately after exercise, skipping sleep, allowing chronic stress to remain unmanaged, or walking only once or twice a week instead of making it a regular habit. Perhaps the biggest mistake of all is believing there is one perfect walking speed that works for everyone. Age, fitness level, medications, body weight, terrain, and overall health all influence what the ideal pace looks like. The good news is that finding your personal fat-burning pace is much easier than most people think. With a few simple guidelines, almost anyone can discover the walking speed that allows their own metabolism to work at its best. So, what is the walking speed that burns the most visceral fat? The answer is not a specific number on a treadmill or a certain number of steps per minute. Instead, it is the pace that allows your body to stay in a comfortable aerobic state while creating enough energy demand to keep your muscles, heart, and mitochondria working efficiently. For most people, this means walking at a speed where you can still speak in short sentences, but singing would feel difficult. Your breathing should be deeper than normal. Your body should feel warm after 5 to 10 minutes, and you should feel confident that you could continue walking for at least 25 to 40 minutes without becoming completely exhausted. For many adults, this pace is roughly 3 to 4 miles per hour. But remember that your ideal speed depends on your age, fitness level, body size, medications, terrain, and overall health. Instead of comparing yourself with someone else, focus on finding the pace that challenges you while still feeling sustainable. If possible, aim for 25 to 40 minutes of walking, at least 5 days each week. After meals, even a 10 to 20-minute walk at this comfortable pace can help reduce blood sugar spikes and improve insulin sensitivity. As your fitness improves, you can occasionally include short bursts of faster walking to strengthen your cardiovascular system while keeping most of your walks at a moderate aerobic intensity. The most important lesson from today's video is simple. The best walking speed is not the fastest pace you can survive. It is the pace your body can repeat consistently while allowing your muscles, heart, liver, pancreas, blood vessels, mitochondria, and fat tissue to work together efficiently. That is the pace that gradually transforms your metabolism and helps reduce visceral fat over time. If you found this video helpful, leave a comment below and tell us how long or how fast you usually walk each day. We'd love to hear about your experience. And if you enjoy science-based videos about walking, intermittent fasting, blood sugar, visceral fat, metabolism, and healthy aging, don't forget to subscribe and join us for our next episode.